Welcome, everyone, to Bring Out the Talent. My name is Maria Malfa, and I am the CEO and president of the Training Associates, otherwise known as TTA.
And I'm Jocelyn Allen, a talent recruitment manager here at TTA, and we're so excited to have you with us today.
We have a special guest and a long-time partner, John O'Keefe from Logical Operations. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. It's a very exciting topic, cybersecurity. Maybe not.
Yes. No, I think not only is it exciting, but I think it's necessary. And it's one of those things that people don't always want to lead the conversation with. But once you dig a little deeper, almost everybody has some sort of personal vested interest in cybersecurity. So I think it is a very important conversation topic.
Agreed.
It's all fun and games until somebody gets hacked.
Oh,
right?
Correct.
Coin it. Drop the mic with Don. Thanks for having us, John.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's all fun and games till you can't get a house because your credit score is 520 and you didn't realize that was happening.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into John's background. John, as I mentioned, is with Logical Operations, and he is a technology education specialist. John is responsible for the design, development, and delivery of Logical Operations emerging technology courseware, portfolio, and certifications. Cybersecurity certifications is a hot topic right now. In 2020, the global pandemic caused all of us to make the shift to remote and hybrid work, forcing many companies to change the way they operate. Many companies had to reactively pivot. Cybercriminals saw our opportunity, so much so that 6 in 10 companies have suffered ransomware attacks in just the past year. With the need for cybersecurity at an all-time high, we wanted to learn from the best on how to proactively address this growing problem. John O'Keefe has over 20 years of experience in the IT and education space. He holds a master's in education theory and policy with an emphasis on curriculum design. John is also a Master Modern Classroom Certified Trainer, otherwise known as MCCT, and a Master Certified Virtual Educator, CVE, and has helped over 5,000 trainers and K-12 educators in virtual instruction techniques. John has a passion for storytelling and film and is always informed on the latest and greatest technology.
Wow, that I don't know how I can possibly live up to that, but I will do my best. I sent that to you hoping that you wouldn't realize that half of it was false. So
Cybersecurity and hacking, starting with our intro.
Exactly. You have now been both socially engineered into accepting me onto this podcast.
So, John, you have an interesting title. They call you Jedi John. Can you tell us how you got that title?
Oh, they do call me that. I am fortunate to work for an amazing organization. Logical Operations is a wonderful company. We're not too big, not too small. I think we're right in that perfect area of about 75 employees or so globally. And we were trying to define my role. I have a fairly unique skill set that most organizations don't exactly know what to do with, but LO has been really great. And they kind of created a role for me. And what we wanted to do was some sort of evangelizing role where I would be able to do events like this, speak in public, and also teach courses while helping to guide and develop kind of the delivery of our courses, what were we going to do next, what were people looking for out in the market. So this role was kind of like a product manager plus an evangelist position. And so we were trying to come up with a title. And the big struggle was that everything felt super cliche, but I am a huge nerd, no surprise there. And one of my first and still lifelong passions is Star Wars. So I have Star Wars tattoos, which you can't see. I'm holding up on camera. I have some rare and valuable Star Wars memorabilia. It's just been my thing for so long. So we were able to settle on Tech Ed Jedi. And I am blessed that Logical Operations would let me create that title because It absolutely is a conversation piece, and it's a really interesting way to introduce yourself. Hey, I'm John, and I'm a Jedi. I bring balance to the education world by combining technology and techniques to help educators and training institutions explore the training galaxy.
The training galaxy, closing the loop there. I like it.
Yeah. It says I'm good at storytelling, so I better be all right at this.
I can see it. I can see the opening intro scrolling with the galaxy in the background, everything you said. So confirmation as well that we saw the tattoos on the arms. So, John, LO has a new certification program released on November 1st. Tell us about the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC, and what is driving the demand for it exactly?
Sure. So CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, is a DoD, Department of Defense initiative. It is their move from a self-attestation model on cybersecurity practices and procedures to a third-party assessment model. What does that mean? The defense industrial base, which are all of the companies that do business with the DoD. And they range from size like Boeing and Lockheed, Raytheon, the big players, all the way down to Dave and Dawn's Garden Supply Shop, who hold a contract for flower services and mowing on a military installation. There are 350,000 organizations that do business. They're called the Defense Industrial Base. And in the past, anytime they've wanted to bid on a contract, all they've had to do was say, we are good at cybersecurity policies. There's been tons of different guidelines for them to follow, but it's been a self-attestation process. The Department of Defense has decided, based on many things that are going on, including the SolarWinds hack, including the Ryzen ransomware, including the Ryzen data breaches, that we need to shore up our supply chain in terms of their cybersecurity practices and procedures. So what CMMC is the DoD saying to all of these businesses out there that no longer will you be able to self-attest that your cybersecurity policies are great. You're going to have a third-party organization come in and look at all your policies and procedures and then evaluate you. And that's CMMC in a nutshell. It can be more complicated than that, but that is what is driving this new certification process.
Who is your main audience for this?
Well, it's going to be any member of the defense industrial base. So any business that bids on federal and DoD contracts. Now, there's some qualifications for that, of course, but we estimate, and the Department of Defense estimates, that there's about 350,000 prime contractors out globally. And so these are organizations that bid on federal contracts. Underneath them, there's a really difficult amount of subcontractors to estimate, somewhere in the millions. And then beyond that, there are IT service vendors, again, ranging from the big players like your Google Cloud and your Microsoft Azure down to your small IT shops that work with Dave and Dawn's Garden Supply Shop, right? So all of these organizations are going to be impacted by this.
Now, is this something that an individual signs up for to go through the process? Is this something that an organization needs to take on and kind of certify all of their people? Because I hear you talking individual contractors, but then at an organizational level too, because as you say, this can be kind of a vendor service as well. So what does the actual certification look like from an individual or a group perspective?
That's a really great question. It's twofold, right? So this ecosystem inside of CMMC contains what are called organizations seeking certification. They have an acronym because everything inside of this has an acronym. And those are now called what we call OSCs, organizations seeking certification. They are everything you just mentioned, right? The 350,000 members of the Defense Industrial Base as prime contractors, the million subcontractors, the IT vendors that are out there. They are going to need to follow a rubric of 17 different domains and 171 best practices of cybersecurity. In order to follow that rubric and achieve mastery in those domains and areas, they're likely going to pursue some form of training. Now, there are official CMMC certifications. There's domain training, and then there's unofficial CMMC training. So it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly, which is why most organizations right now are struggling to figure out exactly how to go about this. A business that wants to do business with the federal government will likely want to have what is called a certified CMMC professional on staff as a steward, as a guide, as someone who will guide their CMMC strategy. They will likely want to get several of their IT employees to skill up into certain areas like incident response, awareness and training, physical media protection. There's 17 different of these areas. So they will likely want to skill up in some of those. And then many organizations will want to get a general awareness training around what life will be like under CMMC, because there will be changes that will not only impact the IT systems, but they will impact sales and marketing, the warehouse. Every department inside an organization is likely going to be impacted by this cybersecurity framework.
Are there any prerequisites for somebody taking this class? Like, what level do they need to be at?
That's, again, a complicated answer, but I'll break it down. The first thing that an individual can look at taking is the Certified CMMC Professional Certification. That's about 40 hours worth of training. And the people that are looking to get that certification will likely have several years of IT experience. They may hold comparable certifications like CISM, CISM, or CISSP. They may hold the CompTIA Holy Trinity, A+, Net+, Security+. They will likely have some experience in IT. That being said, there is nothing stopping, other than the difficulty of the class and the exam, anyone from becoming a certified CMMC professional. So there are no hard and fast prerequisites, but the challenge level is fairly high for this certification. You will likely see advanced candidates, people that have been inside organizations for several years who are familiar with IT systems and IT structure and IT practices, as the stewards who will be leading an organization's adoption strategy. So they will be most likely to get the certified CMMC professional certification. From an awareness perspective, there's no prerequisite, and anyone inside an organization who is seeking to be part of the defense industrial base, or is already part of the defense industrial base, would benefit from a general CMMC awareness training. The same way that health organizations benefit from a general HIPAA training, the same way that a bank, for example, would benefit from having PCI DSS awareness training or SOX training, et cetera.
So you mentioned CISSP certification. How do you believe this certification, CMMC, compares to CISSP?
Well, they're certainly similar. They're both Minds-On certifications designed for IT professionals who are either looking at a further on career as an assessment professional or who are looking to guide their organization through an assessment process. So they're very high level in that regard. The difference is that CISSP as a certification is kind of an industry standard across the board, whereas CMMC is a necessary certification for an assessment professional and a very helpful certification for an IT professional who wants to guide his organization through the CMMC assessment process.
So you had mentioned when we were talking about the prerequisites that there's 40 hours worth of training for this. So how long exactly does it take for somebody to get certified? Is it just the training and then they're done, or is there an additional process after that 40 hours is completed?
There's no additional process after the 40 hours of training. The logical operations courseware for this training, and logical operations, by the way, is a licensed partner publisher, which is an important part of the process. Our courseware is certified by the CMMC AB, the accreditation board, as authorized training materials. And we've scoped this out to be about 40 hours worth of training, which is fairly industry standard for a course like this. CISSP also is about 40 hours of in-classroom training using logical operations materials. We always recommend that for candidates to spend a 2-to-1 ratio when preparing for an exam. So if you're in a classroom for 40 hours, you should probably spend about 80 hours preparing for the exam. Now, this, of course, is a very vague guideline. There are people that could sit a class like this and pass the exam the next day. And there are people who may take hundreds of hours worth of exam prep to pass. We can't speak for an individual's skill set. In terms of answering your very, very specific question, once you have taken training and you have gone through the hoops of registering yourself at the CMMC-AB, there are no additional requirements to sit for the exam. You could, at that moment, purchase an exam voucher, sit for the exam, pass it, and become a CMMC certified professional.
So, John, we briefly mentioned in the intro that there has been a tremendous increase in cybersecurity threats over the past 2 years. What do you believe has led to this?
You've got multiple factors. The first is obviously COVID. The move to remote workforce causes IT challenges. IT systems are designed mostly to be used on premises. When you're in your office, you're behind certain firewalls. There's data loss prevention solutions. Your organization has data at rest and data in transit security. There are all sorts of things that your organization can do to protect you. However, when you make the move to virtual, one, you have employees at their own homes on their own Wi-Fis. Oftentimes, there are issues there. But more importantly, what you see is that people in their own environment become infinitely more comfortable. Maria, 90% of cybersecurity incidences are the result of an end user, you or me or Sarah in the warehouse, just having a bad day, not reading something, not paying attention to a prompt, thinking an email was coming from our boss when it's not. That probably doesn't happen to you, Maria, but to the rest of us. And so what has happened is that people are having more and more bad days. And when you're at home, you become infinitely more comfortable with the technology. So you're working from your couch. There isn't the same kind of tension in your best practices when you're doing that type of thing. So that is a huge contributing factor. We're just more comfortable. We're having more bad days. We're at home. And that is what most social engineers and cyber criminals are hoping for us to have a bad day, to not recognize that an email is bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing that's causing a rise in this is cryptocurrency. And you can see there's a direct correlation in the creation and rise of cryptocurrency starting in 2012 with the Silk Road on the dark web, which was shut about a year later. But now there are literally dozens of marketplaces on the dark web where people can purchase things using cryptocurrency, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin or any one of the other number of cryptos. I'm not a huge crypto guy, but there's so many out there. So people can use this currency to safely transact and buy illegal goods and services. And one of the most popular illegal goods and services that you can purchase now is hacking efforts. You can go onto the dark web, you can find a forum, and I can pay someone using a Bitcoin or some sort of other cryptocurrency to go and hack an organization, and they will go out and do it. So that's a scary landscape. So we've got people that are more vulnerable, that are more susceptible to social engineering, that are more often having bad days. Plus, we have this rise in cybercrime coming from the dark web, from hacking collectives that can now take payment in Bitcoin. So those are the two major contributing factors that are going on right now, which is why we've seen such a huge increase in cybercrime over the last couple of years.
That's wild.
It is wild. And we were actually just speaking with somebody on our tech team about this episode, kind of poking fun that we were going to be techies for the day instead of them. And I was mentioning that one of the big things that I've learned over the last couple of years with cybersecurity issues is that social media is a huge contributor to that because of the surveys, the fun surveys that people put out there, like, oh, what's your celebrity acting name? Give us your mom's maiden name and the street you lived on. And it's like, oh, you mean the security questions to every login website that I have? And it seems fun at the time, but literally, I mean, if you think about the purpose of those being out there, it's probably just for hacking purposes.
It certainly is, and sharing information like that can be absolutely detrimental. I teach a class called Cybersafe, which is an end user awareness training class. And typically it's delivered to organizations, to all of their employees. So that way they can be better about this type of stuff. And one of the things that I always do in the class is I say, don't raise your hand, but I'm willing to bet at least one of you in here has the following for a password: some combination of child name or pet name, an important year or date or location. Maybe there's a hashtag thrown in, and then you can look across the room and you can see a couple of people smiling because you know it's clicked in their brain that their password is Rufus 2003 because Rufus is their dog's name. And then I say, okay, what of that information can I find by just being your friend on Facebook? If I'm your friend on Facebook, do I know your pet's name? Sure. Do I know your birthday? Probably. Do I know where you live? Probably. Do I know other places you've lived? Yeah, because you posted that photo from 7 years ago when you lived at that other address. So now I know that information. And so it's not hard to find all of this information on social media because, Jocelyn, everybody puts it out there willingly. And so that is a huge problem. And one of the reasons why social media and why end users are targeted so frequently is because, quite simply, it's a numbers game. And if you have 100 employees and I can guarantee at least one of them has a password that's Rufus 2003, then I can figure that out pretty quickly.
So what do you think the psychological profile is for all of these hackers? I just find it just unbelievable that people actually want to do this in their life. It's
CSI, man, some of the coolest jobs that were on like Criminal Minds were the people who got in trouble for hacking and then got an elite job.
For sure. And it's funny that's like, that's how the media portrays it, right? Like we think of Criminal Minds and we think of CSI and we think of all of this. And your typical hacker probably has a little bit of a God complex, and they probably are very interested in puzzles because to them, this is a puzzle, right? This is a game. It's a way of figuring something out that's challenging because for some people, there aren't a lot of challenges left. And this type of thing really appeals to that type of person. But what's really scary is that those people are now essentially running their own businesses on the dark web. And when I say dark web, I want to be very clear. It is not hard to get there. It is not some mysterious place that no one can find. And so it does not take a lot of effort to end up on the dark web, to find one of these forums, and to, as long as you have the money, pay someone to do these nefarious activities for you. When we're talking about CMMC, one of the reasons why it's so important is this, because I make a joke about Dave and Dawn's Garden Supply Shop, but that is not an unrealistic expectation of some of the members of the Defense Industrial Base, that they're a small business. They outsource their IT. They're probably run by 2 or 3 people. And for years and years and years, they have some federal contract that is the majority of their business. There is a company in Buffalo, New York, that I believe makes glass. And they make, and you know them as like they make windows. But what they actually do is they make the glass canopies for certain fighter jets. So their main stream of income actually comes from the DoD. You would never know that. They're a small company. But in our process of CMMC, we realized that, this is an organization that not only will need to be assessed, but will need to be assessed at a high level because they're part of the supply chain for certain fighter jets. Right. And that's something that I think gets lost is that Dave and Dawn's Garden Supply Shop, which outsources their IT to a small little vendor that's down the street, could be doing something that's very important. And therefore, when we talk about these cybersecurity incidences going out and getting, hacking a business or any of that, why wouldn't China or North Korea or Iran want to target those small businesses who have less practices in place just by the nature of their size? Mm-hmm. And that's what we've seen with certain technologies that have been leaked in China that the United States was developing. And we know they're coming from not the Lockheeds of the world necessarily, but the smaller businesses of the world.
Very interesting. I remember many years ago when we started teaching cybersecurity training, and I believe the first vendor was Certified Ethical Hacker. I remember looking into that and actually teaching these students on how to hack.
CEH has been around for almost 20 years now. The concept of, mid 2000s. So we're getting close to 20 years now for Certified Ethical Hacker for EC Council. And they are that type of certification, along with obviously CompTIA and CertNexus. These cybersecurity certifications are more important than ever, because it is incredibly important that organizations be doing the best that they can around this. You can't prevent an attack necessarily, but the more training you have for both your end users and your IT staff, the quicker you can remediate an attack. It typically takes businesses 170 days to deal with a cybersecurity incident. And so that's a long time.
It really is.
Yeah.
How does the Certified Ethical Hacker certification compare to the CMMC certification?
Well, I think that it's important to recognize the place that CEH and other security certifications have had in the marketplace building up to this. CMMC as a certification is really the culmination of a series of best practices and procedures, some which we could argue date all the way back into the 1980s and 1990s. But it is the government's attempt at creating a rubric of policies and procedures, what we call a cybersecurity maturity model, that any organization should have, whether they're part of the DoD supply chain or not. I firmly believe that cybersecurity maturity modeling will become an important part of the next few years. So this is a term you're going to hear over and over again. But we have to thank the early certifications that came out, like CEH, for helping to pave the way for the federal government to be able to put out a standard like this. That's what's really important. We now have the ability to say, these are 17 things. These are 17 areas that are important. And inside of each of those areas are a list of practices and procedures. And if you're not doing these, you are putting controlled unclassified information, federal contract information, classified information at risk.
And there's a lot of different ways to align this certification to an organization as far as why it's necessary. So, I mean, it could be, based on the fact that, like you said, they have government level contracts. They need to make sure that they're secure in all of their interactions. But as far as general cybersecurity and protection for an organization, obviously, we would try to encourage this as more of a proactive kind of solution and knowledge for an organization to have. But how do you find current customers are behaving with this? Or is it more reactive? You're coming to people saying, hey, I need this? Or is it, we want to be prepared? What are you seeing from people wanting to get their hands on this?
So right now, the DoD has put out a deadline, and that is fiscal year 2026, which means the end of September 2025. At that point, all DoD contracts that go out into the defense industrial base, which contain either FCI, federal contract information, or CUI, controlled unclassified information, will require anyone who's bidding to have a CMMC level. So everything right now is a proactive move to get ready by September of 2025. Because at that point, regardless of your previous status, regardless of whether or not you've held a contract for 50 years, when you have to rebid on that contract, you will have to demonstrate your CMMC readiness level. And if you cannot show that, if you've not been properly assessed, if you haven't gone through the process of getting ready for it, that you will no longer be eligible to bid on that contract. And that goes from the big players all the way down to the small players. So every organization, whether you're a Lockheed or a Boeing or a Raytheon or a Dave and Dawn's Garden Supply Shop, this is something that they need to proactively prepare for. Because once it goes into effect, you will lose out on business if you are not prepared for this.
What an incredible opportunity. for organizations. I mean, it is. It's exciting for you and LO. It's really exciting for, all of the security trainers that TTA has. I mean, you said you were talking about this and mentioned CISSP. And I was like, oh, those are literally all of the people in our network that I'm thinking of that would love this certification model. I think it's a very cool opportunity, and kudos to the organization and to Logical Operations for taking on such a large undertaking. And you're presenting it incredibly well, John. I like it.
We have estimated that there's about $1 billion worth of training in the next 4 years, based on the amount of organizations, based on the amount of people we think that will need the certification. So for trainers that are listening, or training organizations, this is a $1 billion global opportunity. And I need to remind everyone that the defense industrial base is not, there are LTPs that operate in Europe and North Africa. So this is a global effort. A fun number for you is 1,400. Okay. There are 1,400 vendors that worked on the US F-35 fighter strike platform. It takes 1,400 companies just to put the thing together, just to make the aircraft. That says nothing about the countless number of companies that are required to support it with fuels and weapon and training and all of this. So just one element that we use in our military, the F-35, takes 1,400 organizations to build. So the scope and scale of this is truly massive. And it's something that, as a technology trainer, if you're not familiar with in the next couple of years, you should absolutely get yourself familiar with it, because Logical Operations has already seen $500,000 worth of training go out the door in the first 3 weeks since the certification was launched. It actually started a little early. It started in October. And so that has been an explosive amount of growth. And those numbers will continue to grow and grow and grow as we go, because there's simply too many organizations out there that need training. There's simply too many people. The bottleneck right now is in the amount of training providers that we have. So this is the perfect opportunity to get in at the ground floor.
And that's when you have to get in. You always realize too late that you should have jumped at the beginning,
Absolutely.
Yes. You made a good point earlier, Jocelyn, about getting a lot of our security trainers up to speed on this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know. I'm excited to partner and see how we can provide more certifications and education to our trainers with Logical Operations in this model.
John, you mentioned the CyberSafe credential. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
CyberSafe is a credential from CertNexus. CertNexus is a provider of emerging technology certifications and business level credentials. CyberSafe is designed to help any person inside an organization reach a level of cybersecurity awareness, so that way they will be prepared to protect your company's most valuable resources, your data, and your PII, your personally identifiable information, from things like social engineering attacks, and basic malware and email hacks and all of that. And it fits really nicely inside of CMMC, because one of the domains inside of CMMC is awareness and training. And CyberSafe covers everything that's on that rubric. All of the policies and procedures that go along with awareness and training, CyberSafe does. So if you're looking to check that box off as an organization seeking certification, the CyberSafe class for your employees can be absolutely beneficial to you.
Are there other classes that you teach in the cybersecurity area?
There are plenty of classes. There is the CyberSec First Responder, which is an incident response certification and maps to the incident response domain inside of CMMC. That's another domain that's in there. There's Cybersecure Coder, which maps to several different domains inside of CMMC. So we've got, those are both high stakes certifications from our partner company, CertNexus, again, a emerging technologies certification house. And then there's any other number of cybersecurity classes that can help an individual stand up for this. The biggest one that is super important is the CMMC awareness class. CMMC awareness is for the whole organization. We found that while organizations seeking certification will want to get someone with the high stakes certification, the certified CMMC professional, they'll want to have one or many of them on staff to help, guide them through this process, that organizations really also need the kind of nuts and bolts training, the kind of here's what life is going to be like under CMMC, whether you work at the help desk, you're in marketing, you're in sales, you're in the warehouse. Here are some of the general changes you'll see coming. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what's your future is going to look like. So that CMMC awareness training is a huge piece of this puzzle. And it's something that any organization can really benefit from, even if you're not part of the CMMC ecosystem, because it really helps with organizations' best practices.
Throughout this discussion, obviously, we've talked about CMMC being a huge trend upcoming as, the DoD specifically works towards a goal in 5 years' time of having every single one of their partners certified in this in order to move forward with any opportunities, if you will. But what other trends do you see happening in the upcoming years centered around cybersecurity? Do you get any inklings of things to come or what could be changing, whether that be, I guess, more attacks on the rise or even things getting better? What do you see out there as possibilities for the future in this space?
Sure, absolutely. I see a couple of things, and I want to use one word to describe it, and that word is data. Okay. The next 5 to 10 years will be very data focused. And there are 3 things you can really do with data from an organizational perspective. The first is you can understand it. So I'm talking data science, right? Going into analyzation, understanding what your data is doing for you. The second is securing it. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. So it's keeping that data safe. It's keeping that PII behind closed doors. That will be a huge trend and will continue to be a huge trend. And then the third is data ethics. It's what do we do with this data that we have? How do we behave ethically? So that's one of your major trends that you're going to see, with a huge component of that being cybersecurity. It's going to be analyzing data, securing data, and ethically handling data. Though that's one major trend, with an emphasis on security, of course, because if you can't keep it secure, then you shouldn't have it in the first place. The second major trend I see is this concept of maturity models. The cybersecurity maturity model certification and cybersecurity maturity modeling in general is going to, I believe, become a trend. The Department of Homeland Security is investigating doing a similar approach to CMMC, and the Small Business Association of America recently received a grant from Congress for some odd millions of dollars in order to train in general cybersecurity maturity modeling. This concept of having a best practices rubric with domains and specific steps in each of those domains as to what you should be doing, I think is very beneficial to organizations, because the past 20 years have seen us all trying to figure out what that should look like. And now we're at a point where we kind of know what it looks like, and now it's time to put it into practice. So all of the knowledge we've accumulated since the internet age started, we're now at a point where we can start saying, this is how you keep your organization safe. This is how you keep your personally identifiable information under lock and key. And this is how you analyze data, and this is how you use it ethically. And all of that will start coming together into the IT sphere. And by 2030, I'm truly hopeful that we will see a decrease in the amount of cybercrime due to this type of modeling.
Well, thank you, John. I, for one, really appreciate all the information and the way that you were able to explain it to us. Even though we pretended to be techies for today, it was just pretend. And you've been able to explain why all of this stuff is so important. And I'm excited to see this new avenue in the training and development world. It's really exciting. So thank you so much for all of this. It's been great.
You could see why they call you Jedi John.
I know. I'm disappointed that we haven't seen a lightsaber come out or anything.
I have a lightsaber. You can't see it.
I absolutely believe you when you tell me you have a lightsaber.
No, but this really was very interesting. I enjoy learning more about this topic. That's obviously very important for us personally and professionally. And we thank you so much, John, for being a guest on Bring Out the Talent today.
Thank you guys for having me.
For more information on today's podcast guests and how they can help your organization, please visit www.thetrainingassociates.com.
Bring Out the Talent is a Mudhouse Media production.